What would you do if a child looked into your eyes and asked you to be their parent for just one day? Stop for a moment. Really think about it. Have you ever felt that deep ache of missing something you never had? Have you watched a child's face crumble when they realize they're different from everyone else? That moment when they understand that what other kids take for granted, a father's hand to hold, someone to cheer from the sidelines, is just an empty space in their world? Today's story is about a moment that changed 3 lives forever. It's about what happens when a billionaire's carefully constructed walls collide with a little boy's desperate plea. But here's what will shock you. What happens when saying yes to that plea unleashes feelings you spent decades trying to bury? In the gleaming towers of corporate power, where million-dollar decisions are made with cold precision, Cash and Voss ruled his empire from behind bulletproof glass and steel. Every morning, the same routine, the same empty penthouse, the same hollow success that money couldn't fill. 40 floors below, in a modest apartment filled with secondhand furniture and a mother's fierce love, 7-year-old Rowan Beckett was getting ready for the worst day of his school year. Father's Day at Academy Prep School, where every other child would have someone to show off, and he would stand alone. But what neither the powerful CEO nor the vulnerable child knew was that their paths were about to cross in the most unexpected way. One desperate question, one moment of raw honesty, one decision that would shatter everything they thought they knew about themselves. Because sometimes the most powerful transformations begin with the smallest, most innocent requests. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Soul Thread Stories by T. I'm in a bind, and I need your help to ensure that I and my family can have food to eat and be able to pay our bills and mortgage. If you know you are kind-hearted and WNT God's blessings, you'd smash that subscribe button and watch this story to the end so that your blessings will not pass you by. Also leave a comment telling me where you are watching this story from. You are all I have, and God will bless you and your family. Thank you. 3 lives, 3 secrets. 3 hearts beating in perfect isolation, completely unaware they were about to collide. While other 7-year-olds dreamed of video games and candy, Rowan Beckett sat cross-legged on his bedroom floor, surrounded by a collection that would break your heart. Newspaper clippings of fathers teaching their sons to ride bikes, magazine cutouts of dads at baseball games, photos he'd secretly printed from his school friends' social media accounts, fathers helping with homework, fathers tucking kids into bed. "Good morning, Dad," he whispered to his reflection in the small mirror propped against his wall. "I got an A on my spelling test. Would you be proud of me?" But here's what made Rowan different from other fatherless children. He wasn't just mourning an absent parent. He was studying them. His notebook, hidden under his mattress, contained detailed observations. Jake's dad always ruffles his hair when he's proud. Tommy's dad makes funny voices when reading stories. Michael's dad knows exactly what to say when Michael feels scared. Rowan was preparing, not hoping, preparing. Tessa Marlowe gripped her coffee mug like a lifeline, staring at the empty chair across from their tiny kitchen table. The same chair where she'd imagined conversations with a partner who would share the load, split the worry, hold her when the weight of single motherhood felt crushing. Her phone buzzed. Another text from David, her co-worker who'd been asking her out for months. "Coffee today? I promise I'm not giving up on you." Her finger hovered over a reply button. David was kind, stable, everything a rational woman would want. But Tessa had a secret that kept her frozen in place. She wasn't afraid of choosing the wrong man. She was terrified of choosing any man who might leave, because she'd already watched her son's heart break once from an absent father. The cruel irony? She was protecting Rowan from potential heartbreak by ensuring he'd definitely experience it. Through the thin walls, she could hear him practicing his daily ritual. "Good morning, Dad." Each word felt like a small dagger to her chest. She created this hunger in him by being both mother and father, never quite filling either role completely. 40 floors above the awakening city, Cash and Voss stood at floor-to-ceiling windows, watching dawn break over a kingdom he'd built from nothing. His morning routine was precise, calculated, empty. Workout, shower, Suit, coffee. Review yesterday's victories and today's conquests. But today, something felt different. His assistant's voice echoed from yesterday's meeting. Several elite schools have requested your presence for their father-child programs. Excellent networking opportunities with other high-net-worth families. Cashin had dismissed it with his usual wave, but the phrase lingered. Father-child programs. Hidden in his desk drawer, beneath quarterly reports and acquisition documents, lay a single photograph, a 6-year-old Cashin sitting on his father's shoulders at construction site. His father, a blue-collar worker who died when Cashin was 8, leaving behind nothing but debt, and a son who vowed never to be powerless again. The twisted truth that Cashin never admitted to anyone, not even himself. Every skyscraper he built, every company he acquired, every billion he earned, it was all an elaborate conversation with a ghost. A desperate attempt to prove to a dead man that his son had become worthy of pride. His phone rang. His assistant's voice was carefully neutral. Mr. Voss, there's been an unusual request from Westbrook Academy. A mother needs someone to accompany her son to their Father Appreciation Day. She specifically requested you. Cashin's hand tightened on the phone. That's ridiculous. Forward it to our charitable foundations. Sir, she's not asking for money. She's asking for your time. Just one day. The words hit him like a physical blow. One day. How many days had he wished for just one more day with his own father? What none of them knew. Not the boy who studied fathers like textbooks, not the mother who protected her son by isolating them both, not the billionaire who built empires to impress a dead man, was that their paths were converging with mathematical precision. Because sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. Sometimes it takes 3 broken people and arranges them in exactly the right configuration to heal what they thought was permanently shattered. The stage was set. The players were in position. And in less than 3 hours, a desperate question would change everything. Have you ever had a moment where you realized you were exactly where you needed to be, even when it felt completely wrong? Drop a heart in the comments if you know that feeling. In less than 3 hours, those carefully separated worlds would crash together in the most unexpected place possible. Cashin stood in the gleaming lobby of Meridian Medical Center, adjusting his tie before his quarterly board meeting with the hospital's directors. The charitable foundation meeting could wait. He had millions to discuss, not emotions to process. The elevator doors opened. A woman rushed in, her hands shaking as she pressed a button for the pediatric ward. Tessa Marlowe didn't even glance at the man in the expensive suit standing beside her. Mom, is this where we're going to find him? Cashin's world stopped. A small boy stood between them, his voice carrying the weight of someone far older than his 7 years. Rowan wore his best clothes, a button-down shirt that was slightly too big, khakis that had been carefully pressed, shoes that had been polished until they gleamed. Find who, sweetheart? Tessa's voice was tight with concern. The dad I'm going to ask today. You said desperate times call for desperate measures. The elevator climbed in silence that felt suffocating. Cashin found himself studying the child reflection in the polished steel doors. Those eyes, old, searching, determined in a way that made his chest tighten. Excuse me, Rowan said, turning to face Cashin directly. Are you someone's daddy? The question hung in the air like a live wire. Cashin's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here. Not now. Not when he was wearing his armor of business success and cold professionalism. Rowan, honey, this man is busy. It's okay. The words escaped Cashin's lips before his brain could stop them. He knelt down, meeting the child at eye level. Up close, Rowan's composure was more fragile than it appeared. His hands trembled slightly, and there was a desperate hope in his eyes that cut straight through every defense Cashin had built. What's your name, son? Rowan Beckett. I'm 7 3/4, and I need to ask you something really important. The elevator continued its climb, but time seemed suspended. Other passengers, a doctor in scrubs, an elderly woman with flowers, stood frozen. sensing they were witnessing something profound. "Could you be my daddy just for a day in school?" The words weren't spoken loudly. They weren't dramatic. They were delivered with the simple honesty that only children possess, and they hit Cashin with the force of a sledgehammer. In that moment, Cashin was 8 years old again, standing in his father's empty workshop, asking the silence, "Dad, are you proud of me? Will you ever come back?" The same desperate hope, the same crushing need for validation from a male figure who could provide what no one else could. Tessa's face flushed crimson. "Rowan, you can't just ask strangers." "I'm not a stranger anymore," Cashin said quietly, his voice rough with emotion he couldn't hide. "We've been properly introduced." Rowan's eyes never left Cashin's face. "I know you're probably really busy with important grown-up things, but today is Bring Your Dad to School Day, and everyone else has someone. I don't need you to stay forever. I just need someone to believe in me for one day." Cashin's mind raced. Every logical part of him screamed to politely decline, to recommend a mentorship program, to write a check to the school's scholarship fund. But logic had no power over the memory of his own childhood desperation. "I have a board meeting in 10 minutes, Cashin said slowly. Rowan's face began to fall, preparing for another rejection. "But I also have something more important to do today." The elevator reached the 15th floor. The doors opened. The doctor stepped out, but not before whispering to the elderly woman, "Did you see that man's face change? That was beautiful." Tessa stared at Cashin in shock. "Sir, you don't understand what you're agreeing to." "I understand perfectly." Cashin stood, straightening his tie with newfound purpose. "I understand that some requests are too important to refuse. I understand that some moments are worth more than any meeting." He pulled out his phone and dialed. "Cancel my appointments for today. All of them. Emergency personal situation." Rowan's face transformed. Pure joy replaced cautious hope. And for the first time in years, Cashin remembered what it felt like to be someone's hero. "Really? You'll really come to my school?" "I'll really come to your school." The elevator continued its journey, but everything had already changed. 3 strangers had become something else entirely, a family waiting to be born. Have you ever had a moment that changed everything? Drop a heart in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. 2 hours later, they sat across from each other in the most unlikely location for a life-changing conversation. Not Cashin's intimidating corner office, not a sterile conference room, but the children's section of the public library, where Rowan insisted they needed to go first to make sure Mr. Cashin knows what dads are supposed to do. Cashin Voss, worth more than some small countries, found himself squeezed into a tiny plastic chair designed for elementary school students. His knees nearly touched his chin, his $1,000 suit stretched awkwardly, and his phone buzzed incessantly with messages from his assistant about the chaos his sudden absence was causing. Tessa watched him struggle with the absurd seating arrangement, and something in her chest loosened. This wasn't a calculated business move. No billionaire would suffer this level of physical discomfort for a publicity stunt. "Rowan's checking out books about fathers and sons," she said, nodding toward the stacks where her son was methodically selecting titles. "He does this every few weeks. Studies them like instruction manuals." Cashin's throat tightened. Smart kid. Too smart. He knows exactly what he's missing. The confession. "Mr. Voss." "Cashin. Cashin." She took a shaky breath. "I need you to understand what you're walking into. This isn't just about showing up for a few hours. Rowan has built this day up in his mind for months. If you change your mind, if you decide this is too complicated, if you realize you're in over your head, he'll be devastated. He'll be destroyed." Tessa's voice cracked. "And I'll be the mother who let a stranger break her son's heart because I was too desperate to protect him properly." Cashin leaned forward, ignoring the way the plastic chair groaned under his weight. "Tell me about his father." The question hit like a physical blow. Tessa's hands clenched in her lap. "There is no father. There was never a father. Just a man who disappeared the moment he found out I was pregnant. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be sure. Her eyes blaze with fierce protectiveness. Because I've spent 7 years building walls around my son's heart, and you're about to walk through them like they're made of paper. If you're not absolutely certain you can handle what that means. Cashin's phone buzzed again. The text preview showed his assistant's growing panic. Board members asking if you've been kidnapped. Stock price dropping. Emergency protocols activated. He should care. 3 hours ago, those messages would have sent him running back to his office, choosing empire over emotion. But sitting in this ridiculous chair, watching a 7-year-old boy select books about father-son camping trips, something fundamental had shifted. I built my first company when I was 23, he said quietly. Worked 18-hour days, slept in my office, ate nothing but vending machine food for 2 years. You know why? Tessa waited. Because I wanted to be successful enough that my father would be proud of me. I wanted to achieve something so impressive that it would somehow reach him, wherever he was, and make him regret leaving. His voice dropped lower. My father died when I was 8. I've been trying to impress a ghost for 30 years. Every rational part of Cashin's mind screamed warnings. His reputation, his carefully controlled image, the board members who already questioned his leadership style, the competitors who would seize any sign of weakness. But Rowan's voice echoed in his memory. I just need someone to believe in me for one day. I know what it's like, he said suddenly, to practice conversations with someone who isn't there, to wonder if you're worth loving, to build your entire life around filling a hole that someone else left. Tessa's breath caught. She prepared for rejection, for polite excuses, for the inevitable disappointment. She hadn't prepared for recognition. The difference is, Cashin continued, I had 30 years to build walls. He's only had 7. Maybe it's not too late to show him that some adults keep their promises. You don't know me, Tessa said desperately. I could be anyone. This could be some elaborate scheme. Could be, but it's not. How do you know? Cashin gestured toward Rowan, who was now sitting cross-legged on the floor, completely absorbed in a book about teaching kids to throw a baseball. Because no one manufactures that kind of hope, and no mother manufactures that kind of fear. He pulled out his phone and, without breaking eye contact with Tessa, powered it off completely. What are you doing? Proving I'm serious. My entire empire runs on me being available 24/7. I just went offline for the first time in 15 years. Tessa stared at the dark phone screen. The gesture was small, but its implications were enormous. In a world where billionaires lived and died by their connectivity, Cashin had just chosen presence over power. Okay, she whispered, but we need rules. Name them. One day. Just a day. Agreed. You follow my lead with school protocols. No flashy gestures, no grand announcements. You're just Rowan's dad for the day. Understood. And when it's over, we'll figure out what comes next. Rowan bounded over, arms full of books. I found 12 books about dads. Should we check them all out? Cashin looked at Tessa, then at the eager child between them. Actually, I think we're about to write our own story. If this is giving you all the feels, share this video with someone who needs to hear this story today. 20 minutes later, they stood at the gates of Westbrook Academy, and Cashin experienced something he hadn't felt in decades. Stage fright. Mr. Beckett-Voss is here. Rowan announced the security guard, his voice ringing with pure pride. Cashin's step faltered. Beckett-Voss. The child had hyphenated their names like they were already family. The security guard's eyebrows shot up as he recognized the billionaire CEO from business magazines. But before he could speak, Rowan was already pulling Cashin to the courtyard. That's where I eat lunch alone. Rowan pointed to a bench under an oak tree. And that's where the other kids play soccer during recess. But I just watch because no one picks me for teams. Each casual revelation hit Cashin like a physical blow. This wasn't just about missing a father figure. This was about a child living on the periphery of his own childhood. The whispers started the moment they entered the main hallway. Parents stopped mid-conversation, recognizing the man whose face graced the covers of Fortune and Forbes. Teachers nudged each other. Smartphones appeared, and the atmosphere shifted to something electric. But Rowan noticed none of it. He walked taller, his shoulders squared, his chin up for the first time since Cashin had met him. "Rowan." A boy around his age ran up, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Is that really your dad? The one from the magazines?" Before Cashin could respond, another child chimed in. "My mom says you're lying about having a dad. She says you made him up." The cold playground went silent. Every parent, every teacher, every child turned to watch. This was a moment that could shatter everything, where the beautiful lie would be exposed, where Rowan's desperate hope would crumble in front of his peers. Cashin felt Rowan's hand slip into his, small fingers trembling with uncertainty. "You want to know if I'm really his father?" Cashin said, his voice carrying across the courtyard. He knelt down in his expensive suit, right there on the asphalt, until he was eye level with the doubting children. His knees protested against the concrete, his perfectly pressed pants stretched awkwardly, but he didn't care. "The truth is, I'm the luckiest man in the world, because this incredible kid chose me to be his dad today." What happened next surprised everyone, including Cashin himself. Instead of the awkward corporate small talk he'd expected to make with other parents, he found himself genuinely curious about the children. When a little girl showed him her science project about butterflies, he didn't just nod politely. He asked follow-up questions that made her eyes light up with enthusiasm. During the classroom presentation about family careers, other parents gave polished speeches about their professions. When it was Cashin's turn, he looked at Rowan's expectant face and made a decision that would have horrified his board directors. "I build tall buildings and make a lot of money," he said honestly. "But the most important thing I learned today is that none of that matters if you don't have someone to share it with." The room fell silent. These weren't the words of a billionaire CEO. They were the words of a man having a revelation in real time. Lunchtime, while other father-child pairs sat at tables discussing sports and homework, Cashin found himself following Rowan to that solitary bench under the oak tree. "This is where I come when I feel sad," Rowan said matter-of-factly, settling beside him. "I pretend my dad is sitting here with me, asking about my day." Cashin's throat tightened. "What do you tell him?" "I tell him about the spelling test I aced, and how I helped Mrs. Peterson clean the erasers, and how I wish I was brave enough to ask other kids to play with me." Rowan picked at the grass with his small fingers. "Sometimes I tell him I'm sorry I'm not good enough for him to want to stay." The words hit Cashin like a freight train. This 7-year-old was carrying the same burden he'd carried for 30 years, the crushing belief that he wasn't worthy of love. "Rowan, look at me." The boy turned, his eyes wide and trusting. "You are not the reason your father isn't here. Do you understand me? Sometimes adults make terrible choices that have nothing to do with how amazing their children are." For the first time since meeting him, Rowan's composure cracked. His lower lip trembled, and tears gathered in his eyes. "But what if I'm not special enough?" Cashin pulled the child close, not caring that his silk tie was getting wrinkled or that his reputation for emotional distance was crumbling with every passing second. "You are the most special person I've ever met. You're brave enough to ask strangers for help. You're smart enough to study what you want to become. You're kind enough to worry about making other people happy. Any father would be honored to call you his son." As the afternoon wore on, something extraordinary happened. Cashin stopped performing the role of temporary father and started living it. When Rowan struggled with a math problem, Cashin didn't just give him the answer. He taught him a technique his own father had shown him decades ago. When other children approached their table, drawn by curiosity about the famous billionaire, Cashin made sure to include Rowan in every conversation, treating him as an equal partner rather than a silent observer. During the final school assembly, as they sat side by side watching a presentation about family traditions, Cashin realized he wasn't thinking about the board meetings he was missing or the deals that were waiting. He was completely, totally present in a way he hadn't been since childhood. The final bell rang at 3:15 p.m. Around them, children hugged their fathers goodbye, promised to see them at home, complained about having to wait until next weekend for their next adventure together. Rowan walked slower than usual as they approached the school gates. His steps grew smaller, his shoulders began to slump, and Cashin recognized the body language of someone trying to make a beautiful moment last forever. At the gate, Rowan stopped walking entirely. "Thank you for being my daddy today," he said quietly, not looking up. "I know you have to go back to your real life now." The words were spoken with such resigned acceptance that Cashin's heart shattered. This child expected abandonment. He'd been preparing for goodbyes since the moment they met. Cashin knelt down one final time, taking Rowan's small hands in his. "What if I don't want to go back to my real life? What if this feels more real than anything I've experienced in 30 years? Rowan's head snapped up, hope and disbelief warring in his expression. "What if we made this permanent? If this is hitting you right in the feels, share this video with someone who needs to hear the story." The question hung in the air between them as Rowan ran ahead to the car, his backpack bouncing with each excited step. Permanent. The word felt foreign on Cashin's tongue, yet it was the most honest thing he'd said in years. After Rowan had fallen asleep, exhausted from the emotional high of his perfect day, Tessa and Cashin sat in her modest living room, the space feeling impossibly small with his presence filling it. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, and somehow the billionaire CEO had transformed into someone who looked like he belonged on her second-hand couch. "He's been asleep for an hour, and he's still smiling," Tessa said softly, returning from checking on her son for the third time. "I can't remember the last time I made someone that happy," Cashin admitted, accepting the glass of wine she offered him. Their fingers brushed as she handed it over, and neither of them moved away from the contact. "You changed his entire world today." "He changed mine." The words were simple, but the weight behind them was enormous. Tessa studied his face in the warm lamplight, searching for signs of the polished corporate mask he'd worn that morning. It was completely gone. "Can I ask you something?" Tessa curled up in the armchair across from him, tucking her legs beneath her. "When you were 8, after your father died, did anyone step up? Did anyone try to fill that space?" Cashin's jaw tightened. "No. My mother was too busy working 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I learned to be invisible, to not need anything from anyone. And you've been invisible ever since, haven't you? Even with all that success, all that power, you're still the 8-year-old boy who learned that needing people was dangerous." The observation hit so close to home that Cashin's breath caught. He set down his wine glass, his hands suddenly unsteady. "How do you see that? How do you see me so clearly when I spent 30 years making sure no one could?" Tessa's smile was sad and knowing. "Because I recognize it. I've been invisible too, just in a different way. The single mother who's too scared to date, too scared to let anyone close enough to hurt Rowan. I've been protecting him by keeping us both alone. We're quite a pair," Cashin said softly. "2 people who spent years building walls to keep the world out. Maybe that's why today worked so well. Rowan needed someone who understood what it felt like to be abandoned, and you needed someone who understood what it felt like to be worthy of love." Their eyes met across the small space, and something electric passed between them. This wasn't the careful politeness of 2 adults coordinating childcare. This was recognition, so deep and undeniable. Cashin stood slowly, crossing the room until he was standing in front of her chair. "Tessa." She looked up at him, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Yes." "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay. Am I crazy for thinking that what happened today wasn't just about Rowan? Am I crazy for thinking that maybe we found something neither of us was looking for?" Tessa rose from her chair, bringing them face to face, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "If you're crazy, then I'm crazy too." His hand rose to cup her face, thumb tracing the curve of her cheekbone with reverent gentleness. "I haven't felt this way about anyone in I don't think I've ever felt this way about anyone. Cashin, she whispered, leaning into his touch. Tell me you feel it too. Tell me I'm not alone in this. Instead of answering with words, she rose on her tiptoes and kissed him. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid of breaking something precious. But when she sighed against his mouth, when her hands fisted in his shirt to pull him closer, the tentative became hungry. His arms came around her, pulling her against him, and she melted into his embrace like she'd been waiting her whole life to fit against him just this way. The kiss deepened, became an exploration, a conversation in a language neither of them had spoken in years. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cashin rested his forehead against hers. I should go, he whispered, even as his hands remained on her waist, thumbs tracing circles against her skin to the thin fabric of her blouse. Should you? Her voice was barely audible. I don't trust myself to stay and remain a gentleman. Tessa's smile was soft but certain. What if I don't want you to be a gentleman tonight? He searched her eyes, looking for any hint of uncertainty, any sign that she might regret this in the morning. What he found instead was the same desperate hunger he felt, the same need to be seen, to be touched, to matter to someone. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. His mouth found hers again, and this time there was no hesitation. His hand slid into her hair, tilted her head back so he could deepen the kiss, and she responded with a passion that had been dormant for too long. They moved together toward her bedroom, pausing in the hallway to kiss against the wall, her hands working at the buttons of his shirt, while his mouth traced the column of her throat. Every touch was deliberate, reverent, as if they were both afraid this moment might disappear if they moved too quickly. In the soft darkness of her bedroom, they discovered each other with the patience of people who had waited too long for connection. His hands mapped the curves of her body with worshipful attention, while hers explored the planes of his chest, the strength in his shoulders, the vulnerability in his trembling. When they finally came together, it was with the intensity of two people who found home in each other's arms. Every kiss, every caress, every whispered endearment was both a question and an answer, a giving and a taking, a healing of wounds they carried for too long. Dawn filtered through the curtains, painting everything in soft gold. Tessa woke in Cashin's arms, her head on his chest, his hand stroking her hair with gentle repetition. "Good morning," he murmured against the top of her head. "Good morning." She tilted her face up to look at him, suddenly shy. "Any regrets?" His answer was to kiss her forehead, then her nose, then her mouth with tender certainty. Only that we waited so long to find each other. From down the hall came the sound of Rowan's alarm clock, followed by a sleepy voice calling out, "Mom, is my dad still here?" Tessa and Cashin looked at each other, and the question that had started this whole journey took on new meaning. Could they really make this permanent? "Mom, is my dad still here?" The innocent question from down the hall made both adults freeze. In the soft morning light, reality crashed back. They'd crossed a line last night, but they hadn't discussed what it meant for the complicated dance of building a family. Cashin started to reach for his shirt, but Tessa caught his hand. "Stay," she whispered. "We'll figure this out together." "Coming, sweetheart," she called back to Rowan, then looked at Cashin with eyes that held both vulnerability and determination. "Are you ready for this to get real?" Before he could answer, small feet padded down the hallway. Rowan appeared in the doorway, still in his dinosaur pajamas, his hair sticking up at impossible angles. His eyes went wide when he saw Cashin sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, but clearly having spent the night. "You stayed." Rowan breathed, wonder filling his voice. "I stayed," Cashin confirmed, his throat tight with emotion. Rowan launched himself across the room and into Cashin's arms with such force that they both nearly toppled over. "Does this mean you're going to be my real dad now?" Over Rowan's head, Cashin met Tessa's eyes. The weight of the moment settled on all three of them. They were standing at the threshold of something that could heal them all or break them completely. "What would you think about that?" Cashin asked carefully. "I think it would be the best thing ever." The transition wasn't smooth. Nothing worthwhile ever is. Cashin discovered that being present for a child meant more than showing up. It meant learning to think like a 7-year-old. The first time Rowan had a meltdown over homework, Cashin's instinct was to solve the problem efficiently, the way he'd handle a business crisis. But children, he learned, didn't need solutions as much as they needed to be heard. "I'm stupid," Rowan wailed, throwing his pencil across the kitchen table. "I'll never understand fractions." Cashin's first impulse was to hire a tutor, maybe buy educational software, approach it like any other problem that money could solve. Instead, he found himself getting down on the floor beside Rowan's chair. "You know what I was terrible at when I was your age? Reading. I couldn't understand why letters looked different every time I looked at them." Rowan's crying slowed. Really? And you know what helped me? Breaking it down into tiny pieces. Want to try that with fractions?" 20 minutes later, they were using pizza slices cut from construction paper, and Rowan was giggling as he learned that math could actually be fun. For Tessa, the hardest part wasn't learning to love Cashin. That had happened almost instantly. The challenge was learning to let herself be supported without feeling like she was losing her independence. "I can handle the parent-teacher conference myself," she insisted when Cashin offered to attend with her. "I've been doing this alone for 7 years. I know you can handle it. The question is, do you want to handle it alone?" The distinction hit her like a revelation. Want versus can. Choice versus necessity. For the first time in years, she had options. At the conference, when Mrs. Peterson mentioned Rowan's remarkable transformation, his newfound confidence, his improved social interactions, his academic progress, Tessa felt Cashin's hand slip into hers under the table. The gesture was small, but it represented something enormous. Shared pride, shared responsibility, shared love. 2 months in, Cashin's world collided with theirs in a way none of them had anticipated. "Daddy, why are there people with cameras outside our house?" Rowan asked, peeking through the living room curtains. The business media had discovered Cashin's mysterious family, and the story was spreading like wildfire. Billionaire CEO's secret life, how fatherhood changed everything. Tessa's face went pale. "This is what I was afraid of. We're going to become a spectacle." Cashin pulled them both close. "No, we're going to become whatever we choose to become. The cameras can't change what we have unless we let them." But the pressure was real. Photographers camped outside Rowan's school. Business associates questioned Cashin's priorities. Board members whispered about his distraction. The crisis came during a particularly important board meeting. Cashin was presenting a merger worth hundreds of millions when his phone buzzed with an emergency text from Tessa. "Rowan fell at school. He's asking for you." The room fell silent as Cashin read the message. Every eye was on him, waiting to see what he would choose, the deal or the child. He stood up, straightened his tie, and looked around the room. "Gentlemen, we'll have to continue this tomorrow." "Cashin, this deal has been months in the making, and it will still be there tomorrow. My son needs me now." He walked out, leaving a room full of stunned executives and several $1 million hanging in the balance. At the hospital, he found Rowan with a cast on his arm and tears on his cheeks. "You came," the boy whispered. "I will always come when you need me. Always." That night, as they helped Rowan decorate his cast with superhero stickers, Tessa looked at Cashin with eyes full of love and gratitude. "You know that walking out of that meeting probably cost you millions." "No," Cashin said, signing his name on Rowan's cast with a flourish. "That meeting would have cost me everything that actually matters." By month 4, they'd found their rhythm. Cashin's penthouse became a second home where Rowan's artwork covered the expensive walls, and family movie nights replaced business dinners. The boardroom still got his expertise, but it no longer got his soul. Rowan's transformation was the most remarkable. The quiet, withdrawn child had blossomed into a confident boy who raised his hand in class, joined the soccer team, and invited friends over for playdates. His laugh, once rare and hesitant, now fill their home daily. You know what the best part is? Rowan said one evening as they worked on homework together, I don't have to pretend anymore. I don't have to practice having a dad in the mirror because I actually have one. A year later, they stood in the same library where they'd had their first real conversation, surrounded by the children's section where Rowan had once checked out books about fathers and sons. Now he was a ring bearer at his parents' wedding, beaming with pride as he walked down the aisle. Do you take this woman to be your wife and this child to be your son? The officiant asked. I do, Cashin said, looking at both of them. I take them both forever. Their story became proof that the most profound connections often come from the most unexpected places. That healing happens when we're brave enough to be vulnerable. That family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about choice, commitment, and the courage to love despite the risk. Children, they learned, can teach us as much as we teach them. Rowan had taught Cashin that success without love is just expensive emptiness. He'd taught Tessa that protecting your heart from all risk also protects it from all joy. Most importantly, their story proved that it's never too late to rewrite your story. Never too late to choose love over fear. Never too late to answer when someone asks, could you be my family? Because sometimes, the most important question a child can ask isn't about homework or bedtime stories. Sometimes it's about belonging. What moment in your life became a turning point? Share your story below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear.